it on? Hi, we're going to get started. My name is Matt Brunellis. I'm the acting town manager, hopefully soon to be the permanent town manager. We wrap that up next week. I just want to welcome everybody. This is a great turnout. I think this is the maybe second or third live charrette that we've done regarding the possibilities of a new senior center. We're very excited about the project. I'm here mostly to listen to you. Once we go through the demonstration and present the options, we'll have time for questions. And I really want to know what your input is and what you have to say about the possibilities that we've laid out here. So it's a listening session for us. It's a participation session for you. And so please feel free to speak up at the end of the meeting, and we'd love to hear your opinions on things. So several of us are going to speak today. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Nancy Zimlack, who I'm sure you all know, and then we'll have some more people, and then finally Rachel will come and present her presentation. She's with our architect firm, so doing the feasibility studies. Thank you very much for coming on a Saturday. We really appreciate it, and I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
Thanks, Matt. Nancy Zimlack. I'm the chair of the Council on Aging for the past year. It's been a great job, and it will continue to be a great job because we are going to see this through to the finish. We are going to have a new and improved senior center and or community center with dedicated senior space. That's what we're going to have. So I'm so glad to see all of you here today to learn more about what's happening. We have been working hand in hand with RECALC, which is the Reading Active Living Center Committee. And John Sasso, over here on my right, is one of the members of the committee, and I think he might have a few words that he would like to share with you. But we actively represent the over 60 community. That is our mission, that is our advocacy, that is what we do. And one of the things that's been identified for at least 5 years, some of you would disagree with me and say, no, it's been more like 10 years. We need more space. So that is the mission. We have all kinds of data. RECALC did tons and tons of research on this. We had a UMass study done, and UMass came back with the findings that we really do need a new senior center or a community center with dedicated space. And part of UMass's study was it clearly identified the need for more space for a new senior center, but it also identified an interest in a more community center. So people of all ages from the community could benefit from the new building. And that's one of the things that Rachel will go over in her presentation, how we kind of see that all fitting together. But RECALC's final report basically identified that the over 60 plus population, the needs really should be met within the next 3 years. So that is clearly a priority need. This is the third community forum, and Matt expressed it very well. It's a listening session for us, and Rachel is going to go over where we are in the process. Today we're going to look at 3 locations. As most of you know, Reading does not have a lot of open space, so we are constrained by where we can build. There are pluses and minuses to each site, and I urge you to listen with an open mind on this. And but please share your thoughts and feelings. The timeline on this is to bring this to town meeting in the fall, and to town meeting in the fall, and then it will be put on the ballot in the spring of 2025. Now that might seem a long ways away, but we're going to make it. You can hold my feet to the fire on this. We're going to make it. So, what'd you say, Chris?
I hope we make it.
Oh, oh yeah. Everybody gets free vitamins. So let me introduce John from Recalc. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Nancy. She did a nice job giving you some great background. I just want to take a couple minutes. Again, I also want to thank everybody for coming today. This is exactly as Nancy said, it's a listening session. It's for us, for you folks, it's a participation session. So we definitely want to hear your thoughts and input on this. Just as a little bit more background, I do want to emphasize that this whole process actually did get started probably a long time ago, but more recently, town meeting actually did support funding of the Recalc study work back in 2021, which was started by the select board. So the Recalc group has been working, as Nancy said, for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, to get this project moving in the right direction. Many of you probably participated in the survey, and your input was reflected in those results, that the UMass study, as well as the final Recalc report. So again, Rachel and her team has been brought on back in December of last year to move forward with the feasibility study, which was also supported by the town through some ARPA funds to get the feasibility work accomplished. So I think I just want to emphasize that this process has actually been supported by the community. We want to continue to see that happen. As Nancy mentioned, this will most likely have to go back through town meeting and then to the voters if this project does move forward from that perspective. So I want to emphasize and encourage you all to stay involved and to feel free to reach out to your elected officials to make sure that they know that this is something that we want to continue to see happen. So again, with that, I want to thank you again for coming out on a Saturday morning, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Who's next?
Thanks, John. Thanks, Nancy. Thank you, Matt. If you don't know who I am, I'm Chris Kowaleski, the Elder and Human Services Administrator for the town of Reading. I work in this building. Many of you have seen me. Again, thank you all so much for coming out on this Saturday. We've been trying to hit different times and days to try to get as many folks out to these presentations as possible. Really quickly, this thing working? Feasibility, my slide's coming up, right, Rachel? We're going to do an overview right here. Question is why? Why are we kind of looking at a new center, and why are we doing this? Our current building is, this building that we're in right now is about 30, remodeled in 1993. It is right around, give or take, 4,000 square of usable space in the building. But really, our population, 60 plus population, is really growing. Right now we're right over 7,300 folks, older adults, 60 plus in town. Our population is just over 27,000. Right now our senior center, we have really grown over the past year. We've really stepped up our game on the quality, our programming, what we're offering, what we're doing. And there has been a really amazing increase in population. Right now, for a lot of our events, our larger events, luncheons, we have to cap what we do. This is the biggest room. You're sitting in the biggest room that we have for a luncheon. If we want to do it here at the center, we usually cap it at around 60 just for safety purposes, which means we usually have a wait list of about 25 to 30 people, or if not more. If we want to have larger events, we have to go out and rent space. We have to use, a lot of times we use Hillview Country Club in North Reading, whatever can accommodate 150 people or so. So, a lot of our events, we're just maxed out. We just do not have the space to be able to get everyone in that wants to participate. The thing to keep in mind is, this is your space. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. I'm really grateful that you are here. And so thank you. And it's amazing, you all are the ones that are making this happen. And you're the ones that are making what we're doing now grow. And it's so great to see you participate and be part of this. So I want to say thank you. I'm going to hand it off to Rachel, our architect, and she will proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. My name is Rachel Young. I am from the architecture firm Bardman, Hendry & Archetype, or BHOSA. We are a firm in Boston that primarily does community centers and senior centers. I've been with the firm for over 10 years now, primarily working at senior centers. I love doing this. I love meeting the community at events like this to really get your feedback and hear what you want for your space. So today I'm going to present 3 options or 3 conceptual designs for the senior center, looking at 3 different sites in Reading. The way the format or the agenda, if you will, for this morning's meeting is going to go, we're going to talk about the process, then we're going to dive into looking at the sites and the architecture for the sites. Then we're going to discuss next steps in the process and open it up to questions. I'd like to hold questions to the end for today, unless it's something that's, I'll give an example from the last presentation I gave on Wednesday. Someone in the audience had raised their hand because it was not clear on the plans that we were proposing for this building here, in the plan what the existing building was. So that's a helpful question because it clarifies the plan for everyone else. If there are questions like that, I'd entertain them, but everything else, I think let's hold it to the end. I think we're planning today, it's going to take about 2 hours tops, but I think we actually could get out sooner than that. But I want to make sure that we leave time at the end just to make sure that we answer everyone's questions. So not to repeat what Chris had said, but one of the questions that we've been hearing a lot in the last couple of presentations you've given is, what is the capacity for the new center, or who will turn out for the new center, and how do we anticipate growth? So what I have here is an example of a precedent. This is Situate. Situate was completed, their senior center, which is 15,000 square feet, that was completed in 2020. And Situate is comparable in size and demographics to Reading, so I think it's a really good example to use. But basically, prior to building their new center, they saw about 75 patrons a day. That was what their daily turnout was. And then once the center opened, the most recent data we have is they get about 250 visitors a day. So it's a 300% growth. So you can see that there was pent-up demand, if you will, in Situate, and I think that's comparable to what we have here in Reading. Just as centers around some of the priorities of this project, it's a helpful lens to review the plans and the concepts I'm going to show you today. These were priorities that Recalc and the Council on Aging had come up in their prior work up until today. So when we're looking at these spaces in the design, just to focus what's important, socialization, spaces that allow for informal gathering, multi-purpose size to accommodate social events. Just to give you a reference, the room we're in now is about 1,100 square feet. I think on Wednesday I misstated it. I said it was 800 square feet, but it's in fact 1,100 square feet. And you can see how many people can fit in it today. I think that's just a good thing to keep tucked in the back of our head. Diverse and concurrent uses. Making sure that we have rooms that accommodate different size programs and allow for a variety of programs at the same time. That's what I like to call the Goldilocks concept, where you have a large, medium, and small program rooms, so you can use them for different types of events, like you wouldn't put a book club in the largest program room. It's nice to have a small room to use, so then they have a big program room to use for other events. Physical activity, making sure that we're designing spaces that allow for physical health, such as a fitness room, and a gross motor room, a place that you can have like a dance studio almost. Spaces that allow for meals programming. Meals programming is very popular and important. It's almost like the heart or soul of a senior center. Chris was just sharing that he had a really popular, was it dumpling class you had over the weekend? Yeah, making sure that we have the spaces to do things like that. Outdoor activities. We're going to show you 3 concepts at 3 different sites that are different in sizes and can accommodate different outdoor programming. For example, 2 of the sites can accommodate pickleball. One of the sites, this one here, isn't large enough. So that's something that we would keep in the back of our head when we're looking at these sites. Administrative support. So having enough space for Chris and his staff, but also the appropriate space. So private offices for confidential conversations, for example. I think Chris would tell you that something he's really hurting for right now are those types of spaces. Accessibility. All of these sites should exceed code requirements for accessibility. We want to make sure that these spaces embrace universal design, if you will. Spaces that go beyond what the code requires, that are welcoming and functional for everyone. And then lastly, affordability. That's not just the cost of the programming, but also the cost of the overall project, making sure that it's something that's affordable for patrons and largely, for the Reading community at large. So timeline. John had just spoken about this briefly. This is just to put our presentation today in context. So work has been going on for a while, and it's commendable what you have done in researching your center and its needs. These are just some milestones leading up to today, the BH+A study that's in 2024. As we stated before, the select board would make recommendations on the site in 2024. And then in 2025, you would have a town vote, and conceivably you could start construction documents then to break ground in 2026. And so today, we're giving a presentation on the conceptual design, and we're just starting to have conversations about site selection and schematic design. Schematic design is when we choose one preferred site and define or refine that site better, really making more improvements about what it looks like on the exterior and then how it functions on the interior as well. Just to go over the feasibility process a little longer. So we envision the feasibility process, soup to nuts, to take us till early July. And so where we are now is pretty much right in the middle of the process, where we're looking at conceptual designs, picking a preferred site, estimating the costs of those sites, and then refining the design, as I said, to move into schematic design. There is some due diligence that will happen once a site is selected. So I know previously there were questions about, for example, potential soil contamination at Simon's Way. We have a lot of good information about all of the sites. There has been some excellent due diligence that the town has already done, especially for Oakland Road and Simon's Way. But in terms of doing additional due diligence once the site is selected, we would do that when we narrowed it down to the preferred site. So those sites. There are 3 sites that we're looking at. The first site is where we are here today, Pleasant Street. The second site is Oakland Road up by the high school. And then the third site is Simon's Way by the ice rink. And this map is really just to help you understand how close each one of those sites is to downtown. I know you're all familiar with the 3 sites, but it kind of helps you, again, understand. So Pleasant Street, it's a quarter mile from Town Hall. I know many of you walked over from Town Hall today because you have the early voting that's going on there. So you have an idea, that's a walkable distance, that quarter mile distance. But then you have 3/4 of a mile to Oakland Road, 3 times the distance, really not walkable at that point. And then you have Simon's Way, again, assuming you're coming from the center of town, that's 1.5 miles. Now in addition, a lot of town services are in the center of town, like fire department, police department. So we would take that into consideration when evaluating the sites. You want to make sure that the response time for emergency services is appropriate, exactly, for a site that might be further out of town. So the first site I wanted to review tonight is Oakland Road. So Oakland Road, again, is out by the high school. This plan is oriented where north is to the left. And the concept we're proposing here is to really do our best to center the building in the center of the site. The site, for those who aren't familiar with it, has hills. There's a large hill here. There's another large hill here. And then the center of the site is relatively flat. In addition, locating the building in the center of the site really means that we're distancing ourselves as much as possible from our neighbors. I think for this site, it's particularly important to be a good neighbor. So you have our building, which is a community center with dedicated senior space. It has a full-size gym, and it has 75 parking spaces. And then lastly, it has pickleball courts located right here. Where we're showing the entrance to the parking lot is right here, which is on the curve of the road. That perhaps might be redesigned to allow us to enter across from the entrance to the high school parking lot to give better visibility, make it a little safer in and out of the site. When we're looking at a project of this size, we like to right-size the parking lot, not provide too little, not provide too much. We would be aiming for about 90 parking spaces for a project of this size. And so you can see that here we have 75. It might behoove us to look at any opportunities to use the parking lot across the street for surge capacity for large events like the 150 capacity meal event that Chris was alluding to earlier. The next site is here, Pleasant Street. And for Pleasant Street, what we're proposing is a parking garage and an addition. That parking garage would be 2 levels. The lower level would be at the level of Parker Street, and the upper level would be at the level of Pleasant Street. So to get to the lower level, you would go down Parker Street, and to get to the upper level, you would go down Pleasant Street. This concept here is showing an addition without a gymnasium. We also have a concept that has a gymnasium for this site. So those are 2 options that we have for this site.
Excuse me, is
Yeah.
that garage going to be open on the top level, or is it going to be covered?
It would be, in this concept here, the addition would cover half of it. If we built the gymnasium would cover the entire parking level.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the last site is Simon's Way. For Simon's Way, again, we're proposing a community center with dedicated senior space. It has a full-size gym and 4 pickleball courts. And in this option, we have the opportunity to provide 90 parking spaces. Again, because of the proximity to the ice rink, we might consider downsizing that parking if we can come to an agreement with the ice rink about how we might share parking. I think we never like to build too much asphalt, just given the costs and then also the environmental considerations. And then in this concept, I just wanted to point out, we have the entrance to the site here, right off of Simon's Way. Simon's Way goes around the north side of the parking lot. And this is where Simon's Way tees off from Range Road. Range Road is a private road that leads back to the artillery range back here. And we're proposing entrance here because it minimizes any new road construction that we might need, this being a private road. In this concept, you would come in right here. Again, you would have the 90 parking spaces. And then lastly, this site allows you to have a nice circuit walking trail that can take you around the site, in the wetlands. You can imagine boardwalks and accessible pathways to really engage with that fantastic nature. I can only imagine what's back there, but I think it would be really special. So to dive into the architecture for the 3 sites, I just wanted to back up a second and kind of explain the concept that we're trying to achieve here. I know there's been discussion previously about what does dedicated senior space mean? What does a center for active living or a center for all mean? How are spaces shared, allocated? How does that actually work? So I wanted to walk through 2 options. In the first option, you have community spaces in one wing. You have dedicated spaces for older patrons in another wing. And then you can imagine a central space where you have shared spaces. In this concept, the shared spaces are the multi-purpose room, the gymnasium, the gross motor room, and the fitness room. The multi-purpose room is highlighted in yellow because it would be maintained and managed by the COA. The blue spaces would be spaces that are maintained by community services or recreation, but they're still shared spaces. The second concept is to create a community center with a dedicated senior center space within it. It's a center within a center. And in that concept, you still have all of the dedicated spaces for the older patrons, but within that wing, you have the multipurpose room. and that it's maintained by the COA, but it is still accessible to the general public. And how those spaces are accessible or shared is something that would be worked out between the various departments. So for example, space could be shared on a temporal basis. So you could say that, for example, the gym is used by the general public on the weekend and it's used by seniors during the week, or the fitness room is used by seniors during the day and the general public in the evening. Or, for example, voting. The gymnasium is an excellent place to have voting, and that would be used probably exclusively during the election periods. So those are different ways to share the time, or share spaces based on time. But then also the architecture can lend itself to how the spaces are shared and dedicated. So you would imagine spaces that are difficult to set up and break down are the ones that lend themselves best to being dedicated spaces. So a senior lounge, for example, where you have lots of big comfy chairs and sofas, maybe a fireplace, that lends itself best to being a space that only is used by seniors and perhaps is a little off the beaten path to give it a more private or intimate setting. So our first concept, this is Oakland Road. In Oakland Road, you have the gymnasium, you have offices, and then this is the dedicated senior wing. You have a main entrance here and a lobby that is shared by everyone. And then from that lobby, you can go to the gym, or you can go to the offices, or you can go down this hallway to get to the seniors. Or lastly, you can go up the stairs or elevator to get to the second floor, which has community spaces. So this is the dedicated senior space at Oakland Road. Again, you have the multi-purpose room, the kitchen associated with it. The kitchen has a pass-through counter, just like this one here. Pass-through counter that accesses the multi-purpose room, but also the senior lounge, a game room, and an arts and crafts room. And I provided the square footage is off to the side. The way this is designed, no one is going to go down this hallway unless they're using the senior spaces. So someone in the general public, maybe they're taking a fitness class upstairs, this is the point where they're going to go up the stairs. And so it really creates a nice private dedicated senior wing. You have these spaces here where you don't have to worry about someone coming and going, maybe bothering, getting lost. It's a really intuitive concept. So then the rest of the spaces on the first floor, these are the intergenerational spaces or the community spaces. And then on the second floor, again, more of those community spaces. These spaces would be open to everyone in the community, including seniors, accessible by the stair and the elevator. And here we would have more offices. Those would be offices for community services, so veterans, recreation. Perhaps there would be additional social workers on this floor. And then all of the regular program rooms. These are the rooms that are used for just general classes. You would have a fitness room with fitness equipment. And then this gross motor room would be what I was referring to colloquially as the dance studio. And then lastly in this concept, you have a walking track that's above the gym and access right off of this hallway. A great space to use in the wintertime. The concept for Simon's Way is a little different. Instead of a center within a center, it's a center and a gym side by side. So in this concept, you have two entrances. You have a primary entrance here that gets you into the community center and dedicated senior center spaces. And then you have a second entrance here, which is really dedicated to the gym and intended to be used for after hours. So if you had weekend use for the gym, for example, you would use this entrance and then not have to go through any of this space. The gym is still accessible to the senior center through this hallway and these doors here, but the general public wouldn't have to go through here to get to the gym. So this is the dedicated space in this concept for the seniors. It's the same size square footage of rooms. It's no different in that concept. It's just, again, instead of a center within a center, it is a center next to a gym. And in terms of access control, this is the entrance for the gym. This is where the general public would basically stop and not need to get to the rest of these spaces. And that strong access control after hours means that the spaces, the senior center spaces rather, are less private than the first concept I showed during 9 to 5 weekday use, because the primary entrance for these spaces is still used. So in other words, during the day, the general public is still going to be coming down this way. So you can have someone maybe waiting to help, to get help, if you will, which is right by the senior lounge. So a little more interaction in this concept. This is the second floor. Again, the square footages for this concept are the same as the one I showed you for Oakland Road. The only difference, again, is that you have a dedicated entrance to the gym that would get you to the walking track after hours. Otherwise, during the normal operation hours, you would come through, or come up rather, the stair or the elevator to get to a main hallway, the walking track, additional offices, gross motor, fitness, and program rooms. The last concept is for Pleasant Street. I'm going to show you two concepts, one with a gym and one without a gym. This is the first concept without a gym. So it has 3 levels, just like you have today. The lower level below us, this is the first floor, and then the second floor above us. So the lower level, which is at the Parker Street elevation, you have your parking garage, which has about 24 parking spaces, again accessed off of Parker Street, just like the parking lot you have today is used. And at this level, you would have a little vestibule off of the parking lot, stair and elevator to get you up to the main level, and a few key offices. So maybe this is where the nurse would be, or the transportation coordinator. And then at this level, you would have the fitness room, and then the majority of the space, that would be used for mechanical and storage. That's the existing basement that you have now. The head heights for the existing basement are just code compliant, and I think there's a concern that if we were to upgrade the mechanical systems for this building, we really struggle to provide you something that has adequate head height. So we're proposing that this be used for mechanical space, storage space, which really, you need a lot of space for a building of this size, so it would be a good use. Then moving up to the main level, the level we're at now, there would be an addition that kind of wraps around the side of the building. You'd have an entrance just where you have the entrance now, except instead of turning this way, you turn to the left to get into a large lobby lounge space. The multi-purpose room would be extended with an addition off the back, and you'd have a larger commercial kitchen. The garage would be accessed off of Pleasant Street, and it again would have about 25 parking spaces. From here, you would use the stair or the elevator to get to the 3rd floor. And just to orient yourselves, forgive me, this again is the existing footprint, the existing building is right there. But so then at the 3rd floor, this is where you would have the rest of the program rooms, offices, potentially a roof deck or outdoor space. And so forgive me, I abbreviated these because it was hard to fit everything onto the plans. But you have the arts and crafts room, the game room, PR is program room, this is the gross motor room, and then offices. So this is the square footage of those program spaces, and this is where things differ a little. And I'll show you a comparison chart at the end that basically shows you the size of the rooms with the gym and without the gym. The parking lot is below, so you'd be overlooking the parking lot in this concept.
So that's all shared space?
So the idea with this concept, let me go back, is that the arts and crafts room and the game room would be dedicated senior space. And so the idea is if you come up the stairs, you turn one way to get to the senior dedicated spaces, you turn another way to access the community or shared spaces. So the concept with the gym, the first 2 floors are the same. You have the offices and the fitness room on the lower level. You have the lobby and the multi-purpose room and its kitchen on the main level here. And then on the upper level, you have a gymnasium which takes the place of some of the program rooms. You still have a concept where this is the dedicated senior space and this is the community space. You just have fewer program rooms. And I'll show you a comparison chart. So this is a comparison of the program with a gym and without a gym. And so the rooms that are impacted is you have a small program room that would get slightly smaller with a gym. You would potentially lose the large program room. The gross motor room would get smaller by a few hundred square feet. Offices would get smaller by a few hundred square feet, and the roof deck would get smaller. Now, even though they're getting smaller, they're still functional. They still serve the intended purpose, and I just want to clarify that. Let me just go through the rest of the presentation because we're pretty close to being done, and then we can get questions. So next steps, just where we are in the process. Today we talked a little, it was basically an overview of the sites, an overview of the conceptual designs, but we need to start looking at what is our preferred site. And so I wanted to discuss what the process is for selecting that site. So there are two ways to do that. You can look at the sites using criteria in a non-weighted manner. So basically assigning each site a point from 1 to 3, and the site with the lowest score is the preferred site. So in this example here, you have some site criteria. These are, I want to say, more generic or just suggestions because it's just a hypothetical scenario I'm spelling out. But central location, expansion opportunities, opportunities for multimodal transportation, timing of availability. Is the site available now to develop, or is there time that, like for example, the ice rink? Would we have to wait a lease out or something like that? Again, this is hypothetical, but just to give you an idea of what that means. Traffic concerns, whether the site provides sufficient parking, shared parking opportunities, site construction costs, do we have to clear trees in order to develop the site? Does the site accommodate outdoor activities? Does it facilitate intergenerational use? Does it help or allow for a connection to nature? Are there opportunities for renewable resources? How close is the site to community resources, for example, the library, the town hall, and habitat preservation? So those are, again, all hypothetical suggested criteria, and in this concept, each site is given a number 1 to 3, and the site that has the lowest cumulative score is the preferred site. This is a way that we can really be unbiased in our site selection. That's ultimately what we want to do. We don't want to have our thumb on the scale. We want to be able to say, empirically, this is what this is where the data is leading us, and then letting Recalc make an assessment, and then the select board make an evaluation to then lead us forward in the next steps. So this is a non-weighted scenario, but we could also do a weighted scenario where we say as a community, no, there are some site criteria that are more important to us than others. So for example, in this hypothetical scenario, we're saying that renewable resources and access to community resources are more important. Again, just hypothetical. But for those two site criteria, if they're more important to us, we would weight them heavier, and that would impact what the final score is for each site. So where we are in the process is, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to collect information about costs for the sites, because cost obviously is a criteria that's very important. Once we have that information, we then can proceed to the next step, which is to develop site criteria as a community and the process of evaluating the sites. And then with that information, we can, again, go to the select board or go to Recalc. Go to Recalc first, say this is the analysis that we've done of all of the sites, and then Recalc can take that information then to the select board. So now I think we're at a point where we can get questions. And then we've been ending these presentations with just a straw poll where we just get an idea of what people's preferred sites are. Very informal, just a way of gauging, where we are in the process. So, do you want me to repeat questions?
If you can.
Okay.
And also, if you don't mind, just state your name, first and last name. If you have a question, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think we have this lady in the back first.
Hi, Debbie Rivero. My question for clarification, my understanding, on the Pleasant Street site, the gym, is that gym for public use or just for senior use?
Sure. So, forgive me, say your name again.
Debbie Rivero.
Romero?
Rivero.
Debbie Rivero, and you were asking at the Pleasant Street concept whether the gym is community use or senior use.
Right.
So it would be community use.
Okay, so then my follow-up question is,
Yes.
it looks to me then like we're building a gym for the entire community to use, and as a result, all of the senior rooms are smaller.
So Pleasant Street, yeah, so let me repeat that. So your concern or your question is, by building a gym for the entire community to use, it might impact the total program space that are for seniors to use.
Well, according to the
Yeah.
square footage, it does reduce all of the senior space.
So I just wanted to clarify or kind of validate what you're saying. Pleasant Street is a small site. It is obviously the smallest of the 3 sites and has the most constraints. I think Pleasant Street requires us to be a little more creative about how spaces are shared, or spaces are used for that matter. I think I gave the example the last time we met here, for example, the smallest program room. The smallest program room could double as a conference room, which is another space that was asked for with the offices. You're still getting a space that accommodates your needs. You're getting a conference room. It just also could be used for others to meet in the community. In that instance, you're freeing up some square footage. In addition, with the office spaces, and this is a conversation we haven't had yet in much depth with Chris and his staff, but you could have an open office for staff that don't need private rooms, and that would be a more efficient use of space versus having dedicated offices for each staff member. That additionally might free up space. So there are ways for us to be creative and sharpen our pencils, if you will, to try to get all that program back into Pleasant Street. But it will be a challenge. Pleasant Street is a tight site, it's small, we have constraints. That is one of the cons of this site. But this site also has many pros, and part of this feasibility study is really to evaluate all the pros and cons of each site to understand which one kind of comes out a clear preferred site.
I think, sorry, I'm trying to go in order, just bear with me, I think Ralph right up here first.
Ralph DiGiacomo.
Okay.
Will the gyms come equipped with showers?
So Ralph DiGiacomo, and you asked, would the gyms come equipped with showers? Right now, the concepts we're showing don't have locker rooms for the gyms, but that's the point of these conversations here, is to hear if that's something you'd like. There are various ways to accommodate that request. You could have standalone locker rooms, like you might think like in a high school or a Y setting, or you could have showers that are integrated in some of the bathrooms. A lot of the bathrooms that are in these designs are single stall restrooms, so for one user, and those could easily accommodate a small shower.
All right, we had Jean in the back.
Hi, Jean Prado. I have a quick question. In all 3 sites, if my estimation is correct, the senior activity overall area is not gaining that much square footage. Right now, we're 4,000 square feet here, and some of the sites, we're only gaining probably about 1,000, and everything else is going to be community. Am I correct?
So Jean Prado, and you were asking how, and I'm going to, forgive me if I rephrase this, how much extra or additional space is the dedicated senior,
Yes.
how much additional space is the dedicated senior space getting in the overall program? So I think that it really is helpful to think about how frequently or how often seniors are using the rest of the community space. And I don't know if, I don't want to put Jenna and Chris on the spot, but in other centers that we've done, it really works out to be that seniors are using most of those spaces during daily hours, and that they are in effect senior spaces 80% of the time. It's just that they are managed and maintained by a different department, and there is conversations and flexibility about how they are used, versus the dedicated senior spaces, which are conversely spaces which we're saying that the general public rather is really never going to use, if that makes sense.
All right, we had, right here.
My name is Marie Terra, and I'd like to know regarding the transportation. Like right now, I like to take some exercise here in the morning. But I don't have the transportation from where I live to eat or from here to where I live. I'm wondering about that because, as you know, many of us as to do not have those transportation wherever we go because we cannot drive any longer, or we have a period where we cannot drive.
Okay. So Marie asked about transportation and how transportation would be provided for patrons who do not have cars, or have limited access to cars. I think Chris would do an excellent job about building this because he's so passionate about his transportation program.
So we are looking at transportation options specifically for all three sites. We have transportation now. We have 2 vans. The nice thing is our medical transportation that we offer is done by a separate company. So we're fortunate enough to have medical transportation done by a separate company. So on top of that, our 2 vans, right now, we do, if anyone needs a ride to the center, if they call us within 48 hours, they can get here. Usually, 99% of the time, depending on what's going on. And then we have transportation for shopping trips throughout. We have a specific schedule each month. Right now, Walmart, Market Basket, different places around town. So we do take care of that. Depending on which site, I know it's been explored, looking at shuttles and other transportation options, especially the further out away from the center of town you are, so we can make sure we provide transportation. So we do, like I said, we do provide transportation. I would say 99% of the time, if you call and you need to get here, we can usually get you here. So, if something's going on, that might not be the case, but usually it is. So, all right, follow up really quickly.
Yes. What exercise in the morning? We don't have any transportation.
What's that?
The exercise that we have in this room in the morning,
Yep.
we do not have the transportation.
There is transportation if you ask. If you ask and if it's available, you can get, yes.
At 9 a.m.
Yes. But like I said, it's also dependent upon right now if we have our regular scheduled trips. So just gotta bear with us on that one. And we also have to make sure we have notice, so.
That's what I want to know. Are we going to add them in the future?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. I think, hold on one second, Henry. You got,
she said?
Pat,
She asked if there would be transportation in the future in these concepts, and Chris said yes, that's the fact.
all right, Pat, did you have a question?
Yes, my question is, what evidence is there that another gym is needed in Reading, since we have a high school gym and a Y gym? And is there an expectation that, well, leave it at that.
Okay.
What evidence
So-
do you have?
Pat is asking, what evidence is there that we in fact would need, or that there's demand for an additional gym, given that Reading has gyms at the Y and at the high schools? So we could definitely look at, for example, we've done multiple surveys that would tell you what the interest in a gym is from the wider community. That's some data that we do have on hand. We also have precedents, like I mentioned Situate earlier, but other precedents projects we've done in the past with gyms that could show you, within that town, how many existing gyms were there and what was the use of the gym after it was constructed. So you could understand how, the demand there. But I think one of the things to consider in designing or providing an additional gym for the town is the gyms that are in the schools now are not as, the hours of operation for the general public are limited. And I can have Jenna, if she wants to speak to that in more depth. But then also, the way that it works now is that community services pays a fee to the schools to use those gyms. And so there is some value in having a gym that is managed by community services, in and of itself, if that makes sense.
Maybe a quick follow-up. Really quick follow-up that I don't really necessarily think of it as a gym. I like to think of it as a multi-space great hall or something. Right now, you know, we have to pay Hillview Country Club for large events, you know, $5,000, $10,000. Yes, there might be a basketball court, you might be able to pay pickleball court in there, but think about other things that you can do in a gym. We can have a large, let's say, senior prom. When I say senior prom, I'm not talking the high school, I'm talking our seniors.
Maybe it should be called a multi-purpose
That-
room and not a gym.
Yeah, that's what I just said is, you know, don't think of it necessarily as a gym, but a multi-purpose room that we can hold large functions in, 150, 200 folks. We can have performances in. You know, think of it as a space that you could really utilize for different things, not just sports and, you know, basketball and things like that. And that's a good way to think about it. And we don't have to schedule out. Also, typically gyms are a good source of revenue. You can rent it out. So if you, I used to work at the Malden YMCA, and I was in charge of rentals. You know, they had soccer Sunday nights at a organization rented. You know, so there's a lot of options with gyms. Also, what's really nice is to have a dedicated space for older adults. Typically the winter months, older adults tend to sit more in the winter months because there's not a lot of spaces. You have to be careful going outside. There's no place, you know, yes, we have a walking group and the winters have been mild, but, you know, a big perk to a gym, especially with a, you know, walking track can be, you know, you can walk through the winter and we can keep you moving and strong, which is huge for older adults, 60 plus. You know, every year you start to lose muscle tone the less you move. So it's important to stay active. So like Pat said, and like I mentioned, think of it as a multi-purpose space, not necessarily as a gym.
And just to piggyback on what Chris had said, because I did not explain this earlier, what the gym has the capacity for. I said this in previous presentations, I didn't say it today, so for those that have not come prior. The gym that we showed has the capacity for 3 pickleball courts, the walking track that can be used at the same time, and then it is also sized for a full-size basketball court or volleyball court. So just to give you an idea of how it can be used.
Hold on one second, we got a car right over here.
2 parts. One, Simon's Way is off April, whatever. April. Correct. So is there a stoplight there? Because that's very heavy traffic.
There is a
There's a stoplight there, yes.
So you could turn left.
Yes.
That's what I was concerned
Yeah,
about.
there's a stoplight there.
So I didn't get your name, forgive me.
I'm Cara.
Cara. So Cara, I just asked for clarification. At the Simon's Way site, is there a stoplight at Haverhill and Simon's Way? And there is.
Okay. Second part.
Yep.
You show us the square footage for each site. Can you do a slide with comparison of the 3 square footage together?
Yes. So the second question was, can there be a program slide that compares all 3 sites? Yes, I can do that. I can tell you though right now that Simon's Way and Oakland Road are identical, and all the main spaces here, for example, the multi-purpose room. The multi-purpose room at all 3 sites ranges from 2,300 to 2,500 square feet. So it's in essence the same space. Likewise, the commercial kitchen and the main spaces that we said would be in those dedicated senior center wings. So the arts and crafts room, here it's 900 square feet, and the other 2 it's 1,000 square feet. So they're very close. It's just the slide I showed you here between the 2 options at this site where things start to vary a little. And I want to stress that part of this conversation is to say, for example, I really want that extra large program room at this site. That is a non-negotiable. And then I will go back and I will sharpen my pencil and I will say, okay, to get that, let's think creatively. Let's get rid of Chris's staff's break room, or, you know, you see where I'm going here. But that's the feedback that's very valuable at this stage in the
So
game.
the main difference between the three appears to be parking.
So parking is one, forgive me, so just to restate your question, she was asking if the main difference between the three sites then comes down to parking. Yes, parking, outdoor amenities differ at each site, the location, of course, and all those kind of criteria I was showing you before, but in terms of space, to your point, parking, how the gym works, whether it's 2 or 3 stories. You have a 3-story center now, or a 3-level center. You don't usually see that, it's not very common. That might be something that isn't preferred. So that's another way that the sites are different in terms of how they're using the space. It's not just, I guess I'm trying to say about the total square footage, but it's how things are arranged on the sites as well.
I think this gentleman right here in the,
Oh, hi, Kendrick C. I was going to get back to the one point on the multi-purpose room / gymnasium thing, which is basically, those are facilities that are owned by other organizations that have different priorities. So they have scheduling priority of their own space, right? Is my assumption, and that would go true for anything that we propose.
So Kendrick C.
Yes.
Yes, had asked about, or made the point that the gyms that were referenced earlier at the different, like at the Y and the schools, those are managed by entities that have their own priorities for how those spaces are used, and I think that is true. So an example would be, their sports teams get priority for practice, and sometimes that might not be in alignment with how you need to use the space.
My name is Henrietta Murata. My question is, first of all, why do we really need a gym in a senior center? When we are trying to gain some space here for the seniors, because once you implement the gym, younger groups are gonna kind of take over and the seniors get left behind.
So-
In a sense. So that's really not giving us any space for any extra things that the senior want to have here. Unless I'm misunderstanding something somewhere along the line. And plus, it's not gonna be a free gym, it's gonna be a price for it, right? Am I correct, or is this a free gym?
And so Henrietta, right? Murata had asked about, I'm going to rephrase, I'll start backwards. One was whether there'll be a cost for using this gym, and there would not be a cost for using this gym. I think the example that Chris was giving earlier about rentals would be for other community groups. So for example, intramural basketball, they would pay a fee to rent out the space, but for seniors in the community, there would be no cost to use that gym. And then, just to make sure I answer all your questions, the first question you asked was about your concern that this gym would be used by younger patrons, and then so why do we want this in a senior center? Not to restate entirely what Chris had said earlier, but he made a really compelling argument for why you might be in favor of a gym. The fact that it allows for a lot of gross motor activity in winter months. That's one reason. Another reason is this center, just to give us a lens to review this work, it's meant for 60+ patrons. That's our target demographic. And so we want to make sure that we're allowing for that physical activity that we talked about in the beginning, and that's what the gym would allow for.
Right.
Yeah.
But from my previous experience as far as seniors in general, and there's something going on, what is the attendance? You find a very low attendance. So just because there's a gym, it doesn't mean that the seniors are going to rush into that gym to use it, or anybody else. Even I have a free gym, and I don't even go to it. I'm sorry, but that's, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way.
You don't have to be apologetic for your opinion then. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear what people want.
That it seems in the past, whenever there's been some kind of a event going on, do you find this, because the room is small, yes, they're limited to how many people, but do you find that really there's an influx of people, standing at the door, I want to get in, I want to get in? No, it isn't.
So I think that.
So, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding something along the line. I know parking has always been a problem, and because it's convenient to the center, I know, but that's not the question. The question is, do we get the response that we are looking for once this increases the premises, and then our taxes are going to be, skyrocket because of this? Then do we go back to that and say, gee, it didn't work out, let's go back and give the money back to the taxpayers?
So I can answer part of that, okay, remember the whole question, I can answer part of that. With the lines, we don't allow lines right now. Because we are tight on space here at the Pleasant Street Center, we have to be very precise on when we do events and when people can actually come here. A good example is on Monday mornings with Pat. Pat holds exercise at 9 to 10. Bingo starts at 10:30. I have made it very clear that bingo people cannot arrive here. They cannot be here, arrive until 10:10 because we have to tear down for seats. We have to get tables set up and chairs. So that's part of why you don't typically see a line here, is because of the way we have to schedule things and how we say when people can arrive because of our limited space.
No, but
Yep.
excuse me.
Hold on one second, hold on.
I think what I'm trying to say is that I think from previous, you can go by the people that are on the waiting list when there's an event. That tells you how many people are really interested in the town of wedding. Not
So-
because the line outside, I don't mean that the line outside.
So like I said at the very beginning, for our bigger events, we have our St. Patrick's Day event coming up in 2 weeks. We put it out there on this past Friday. In 3 hours, it filled up to 60. Right now, we have about 25 to 30 people on the wait list within 3 hours. That's where I'm at right there. So the waiting list is not for every event that we have, but for our big events. Like I said, typically within 2 to 3 hours, they max out. And then somewhere lately we've been getting 25 to 30 people on the wait list. Also with the gym, something that we've heard a lot about is pickleball. Right now, they have to contend with space at the high school and the gym when they play inside. It would be nice, a lot of those players are 60 plus. It would be nice to have them part of our senior center rather than somewhere else. It'd be nice to be able to accommodate them in that group that we don't necessarily reach. So, thank you. All right, I'm gonna hand the mic off. I'm gonna go, just bear with me. We have plenty of time, just bear with me. I'm trying to go in order here. So right here, next.
My name is Barbara, and it's just a quick question. Could this slideshow be made available on the website?
Yes. So Barbara was asking about the slideshow and whether it's available. So yes, the intent was, you saw the text on the slides. I was trying to do my very best so that it could be a self-contained document that you could download and kind of understand what was going on. So that will be uploaded to the Recalc. There's a Recalc page. Actually, I have one slide I did not show, which was if you had additional questions, who to reach out to and where to go. So I'll be sure to bring that back up before we're done.
Also,
Yep.
sorry. Also, RCTV is here today recording this, so it'll be up. Typically, they get it on YouTube pretty soon, so you could actually see today's presentation. All right. So right here, yeah.
Carol Anderson. I appreciate all of the talk about the gym, but could we, and as Pat mentioned, it's really not just a gym. I would say, couldn't we call it the Great Hall? And seriously, and then you could have functions in a Great Hall. You can have the banquets, you can have concerts for the seniors, you can have dramatic presentations, lectures, and with that, it still maintains the fact that you can have that walking track up above, which I love. to be able to have a place to walk in comfort and socialize with people, to be able to walk. And the other point is, when you think of the square footage of building a great hall, compared to all of the little compartments of the kitchens and the offices and the all types of infrastructure, square footage wise, it probably doesn't cost as much as the square footage of those other parts of the building. Is that, you know what I mean? You're building a space, which I would call the Great Hall, and we can have people come in, and I think personally, it would be beautiful. I don't need a gymnasium, although that would be fun, but we're having fitness rooms. And then to have the option of saying, is enough floor space to have dances, to have like a studio, to have 3 pickleballs, which will buy the votes of the people who want the pickleball courts. So you know what, we're gonna have to think, if we want a senior center, we are gonna have to get everybody on board and be ready to get a vote, but we've got to appeal and sweeten the pot to everybody in the community, not just the 60 and over. And I say, a beautiful Great Hall, happy walking, and everything. So that's my
Thank you, Carol. So just to restate what you said, I'm going to simplify it a little, but the idea of combining or renaming what the gym is so that it's more of a multifunctional space, it can accommodate beyond just those physical activities I described earlier, which can be place for dances, meals, still incorporate the walking track. I think that's an excellent idea. We can certainly look at that further and see what that would mean.
I think calling it a community room versus a gym.
Okay.
get away from that gym.
Okay,
Hold on one second.
just so everyone can hear.
Hold on 1 second, Richard. Rosemary had her hand up, and then Richard.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rosemary.
Rosemary.
At the last meeting, I had public drawings of each site. We have those to show the people.
We can't hear anything.
No, that's our, don't worry.
And then all of your drawings, have you isolated the reception desk and the elevator area so
So,
that they can be freestanding and away from activities?
so Rosemary was asking, one, do we have rendered aerial site plans for each site? And those were at the very beginning.
No, they were different ones that were colored, and everybody.
You're asking for
gasped.
the old ones?
Everybody gasped when they saw this site.
Okay. I can certainly include, we had done, I will say, more conceptual plans in the previous presentations versus the rendered ones we have today. They do represent the same schemes though. We haven't changed anything about like parking layout or anything like that.
People saw it differently.
Sure.
When they saw that all we were left with was a little square of this building, which to me, we should have put 2 cents in, and then the parking lot all around.
So Rosemary found, sorry, I didn't cut you off, Rosemary. Rosemary, I think you're saying that the plans we showed last time were easier to read or a little more legible?
Visually,
Yes.
presented a different view.
Okay.
So I think that people should see that before they leave.
Okay.
Before they form any opinion.
I do not have them with me today. Well, actually, we have them in the old presentation, which you have. We could bring them up if we had time. And forgive me, Rosemary, because you had another point which I want to make sure I get.
Reception desk.
Oh, yes, okay.
And the elevator, they have to be isolated.
So Rosemary was asking, not to cut you off, you jotted my memory, I remember now. In all of the concepts that we showed today, is the reception desk isolated as well as the elevator lobby area. And in all 3 concepts, you have the elevator off of a side hallway, off of the main lobby. So it's not off of a main space like you have here. And likewise, the reception desks are part of like an administrative suite. In the concept that we showed for the one today, it is a room by itself on the first floor that is off of the main lobby. But it's not off of a program room like you have here today. That help?
Richard?
My name's Richard Junker, I live on Market Avenue. I would assume that if we picked this location, that this would have to be closed for at least a year and a half while they were doing construction. So I would almost eliminate that option just for that reason, because we would have no place at all for, who knows, a year and a half, maybe two, but certainly at least a year. This place would have to be closed for new construction. Personally, I would like the Oakland Road site, because I know over at Simon's Way, that swamp area, as the floods come up more and more, that area would have to be protected, probably at a much larger cost, to make sure that there was remediation from flooding. Oakland Road, I don't think we'd have that problem.
So Richard, thank you. Richard's two questions were about if we built here, where would the seniors go while the center is being built? And it is true, if for this concept, if we chose to redevelop this site, we would need to find a temporary space for the senior center. It would be similar to the temporary library space you had when the library was being renovated. And it would be for about a year. That's probably the estimated construction duration. A year, maybe a year and a half. But the center would not close. It would just move to a temporary space. And then concerning Simon's Way, Richard had pointed out that because it is in a wetland, there are potential concerns with water levels and floodplains, and that is something that we are actively looking at with our civil engineer. And in terms of costs, this is something I've said in previous presentations, but each one of these sites is going to have cost constraints or cost implications. There's not one site that is perfect and doesn't have additional costs. So for example, Simon's Way, there would be potential costs with potentially extending Range Road. That would be a cost, extraneous cost for that site, if you will. Oakland Road, we know that there's ledge or there's hilly, we're moving a lot of dirt around basically. There are costs with that. This site here, we're talking about building a parking garage. There are costs with that. So when we do the cost estimation, I think we're gonna see that those unique costs for each site are going to be potentially comparable.
Are you going to include the cost of moving this site
Yes.
temporarily in
Yep.
that? So we know what we're paying extra?
Yeah, so Richard was asking whether the temporary relocation costs, if we chose this site, would be included in the cost estimate for the site, and yes, it would be. Yeah.
Charlotte, did you have a question?
I was just going to say, here to the comment about having a gym. I have been in senior centers all over the country. The last one I attended most was in Belmont, California, and it had a gym, it had the basketball things were up. It was used for pickleball early in the morning by seniors, who then it's easy to take those courts in off the site. Then there were large exercise classes, for free exercises. And it worked beautifully. We could be used for banquets. So it was there again. It worked. It was used 99.9% by seniors, and it had multivarious uses. And I think the idea of just calling a rose by another name it makes good sense. Yes.
Just to repeat, I can't, not to assume everyone heard. Your name again?
Charlotte Hart.
Okay. So Charlotte was just piggybacking on a comment earlier about expanding our concept of what the gym is and the multiple uses that could go on there based on her experience at other centers in other parts of the country. Okay.
Carolyn?
I'm Marilyn Shapley. Just on the cost point, in factoring, and I assume you're doing this, but just to raise the issues so people are aware, if we chose a site other than here, there would be some sort of revenue coming from whatever the future purpose of this building came as well. I don't know if we'd sell it, use it for a different town, but it's an asset, so it could go to a different purpose, and that would hopefully offset some of the cost.
So Marilyn made an excellent point, thank you Marilyn, that the center we're in now is a fantastic asset to the community regardless of where a community/senior center might relocate to. And we need to take into consideration what the future revenue from keeping this in the community might be and what its future uses might be as well. Yep.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm John Coote. I'm just looking for some numbers. Gross square footage for the various concepts that you have. And also an important number, I think, is the distance from the center of population of Reading to the various sites, because transportation costs, transportation times can be very important. Simmons Way obviously is at the edge of town, furthest from the centre of gravity of the population, right? So I think that's an important factor. But can I have some gross square footage, because
Sure.
costs are important.
Of course, of course. So John was asking first about general square footages. So for a center with a gymnasium, it's about 26,000 square feet. If we were to do a standalone senior center, we haven't really proposed that as a concept, but you would expect that to be around 16,000 square feet, just to give you an idea. And then you had asked about distances from the center of town. So I'm going to remember two of the numbers that I presented in that very early slide. Pleasant Street is about a quarter of a mile from the town hall. Oakland.
I'm thinking from the town hall, I'm thinking of the centre of population.
From a center of population.
Population of Reading, yes.
So off the top of my head, I do not know that, but I could find that out for you. I think it's just defining what the center of population is.
Because busing people to Simmons Way, for example, is much more difficult than busing them to here.
Yes, yes.
Much more costly, more inconvenient for people. I don't think that's an important factor.
So just to restate so everyone can hear. So John was just saying that we need to look at where people are living in relation to where these centers are located to understand what the travel distance is and what the cost associated with transportation might be. Yeah.
You should keep in mind, you want to look at over 60 population, not general population.
Well, that's it.
Did you have anything else to say on that? Okay. Rosemary, go ahead.
We're talking about expenses. Keep in mind, when we had to rent a space for the library 10 years ago down at Market Basket, I spoke to the mayor at the time, and he said to me we were paying $14,000 a month down there. So it'll be a lot more money today. Plus, they redid that whole area for the library, the rugs, the moving of all the equipment. So that is not cheap when you talk about locate somewhere else.
So Rosemary was just sharing that she remembered that the costs for the temporary library space being around $14,000 a month. 10 years ago, so just.
I think we have, I saw three. We're just gonna go right in a row here. 1, 2, and then 3.
Okay, real quick, going back to the looking at ages thing, I'm actually in a younger age, but I will be 60 when this comes to fruition. So I probably don't want to be looking at that earlier, but maybe I guess I'll be the representative of the target audience that you're trying to sell to, right? Because I still have a kid in the middle school, so it's like, you know, I got foots in several worlds here.
So just to restate that, you are an upcoming patron in that 60+ demographic, and to look at that rising demographic, if you will, when we're designing the space. It's a good point.
Also to the center, as John mentioned, and it's a good point, you know, the center of, if we're looking at the 60+ population, the center of that, it could potentially be a moving target a little bit, depending on, you know, in 10 years, we may have a older population on one side of town, and you know, a little bit after that, it could be on another. So it'll shift a little bit, but John is correct, you know, the further out we are, the more transportation that we are probably going to have. All right, 2.
Debbie again, representing the same age group, 60+ coming in. I think it's really important to have an exercise, physical fitness, movement for seniors. That gym, my only concern with asking about if the gym was open to the community versus just for the seniors is, you know, a lot of seniors don't want to go to a public gym because it's intimidating. And if you have like exercise opportunities for seniors, you know, without the 20-something next to you, you know, lifting the heavy weights and stuff, that was kind of my question about whether it was community versus just for seniors. But I think a walking trail and movement and exercises for seniors, I think that's very important. As far as location, I'm hearing as a pro that this is very close to town hall, and I don't really see that as a huge benefit, because I don't think any of the seniors are walking to the senior center. Oh, so I don't really attend a lot of senior activities because there's not a lot for the younger 60s, which I think, the pickleball and the activities would get more people in to use it than just sitting down for a meal. I don't think a lot of seniors are walking to the senior center. So being, a quarter of a mile from the town hall to me means nothing. I think once you get in a car or in a shuttle to go to the senior center, it doesn't matter if it's a quarter of a mile down the road or a mile and a half down the road. I think once you get here, it's what's here for you is the most important. So just my thoughts. And this is my first meeting on the whole subject, so excuse me if I don't know all the background.
Welcome. So I'll try my best to restate that succinctly. Debbie seems to like the idea of a gym, if that's but wants to make sure that it's
important for seniors.
Gym is important, but for seniors, so that seniors are not made uncomfortable, if you will, by doing activities for the general public, that there's a value in having dedicated times and activities for that, for you. In addition, there's a question of how important it is to be close to town hall. And I think, perhaps I misspoke, really town center. You have a very vibrant commercial district right here, and I've heard anecdotally from other members that, you might have a caregiver, for example, that drops someone off to take a class here and goes and grabs a coffee at Cafe Nero. So it's that idea that you're close to, you're able to run errands and you're close to other amenities, not necessarily town hall per se itself. And then you had one more point, which
I think it's. I don't know, but I do have a comment, really. I forget I think we both forgot one of your parts of your question, and I think both apologize for that. Something to keep in mind right now is currently Recreation does use the current building here right now. They have ramped up their evening activities here. The nice thing is, I'm going to try to, Jenna, I'm going to try to keep that power as we move forward. But the nice thing is, I field all the rentals that happen here at the Pleasant Street Center. So we have formed a really good Elder and Human Services, Recreation. We're both part of the Community Services Department, with the director Jenna, who's just over here on my right. But the nice thing is, to maximize the use of this space, Recreation has been doing activities here in the evening. But the nice thing is, we've been working really closely together. And this has happened a couple times, is, if something comes up, I will schedule them and rent out the space to them and approve it. But there's been a couple times where something comes up on the senior end of things, and I call Recreation. I'm like, hey, I need this space. It actually just happened this week. We were having night bingo here, and they started an art class. They had one for children and one for adults. Nora attended, who was in the back, and I called Recreation. I was like, hey, I need the great room. What's your number? I don't want to. Let's try not to cancel the recreation activity. But I was like, hey, how many? And he's like, I have 9. I was like, how about we put you upstairs so I can use the great room. Once we're done at 7, the adult art class can use the great room. So the nice thing is we formed a really close partnership, or we do have one, with Recreation. And they've been really great because to allow us to make sure we have that dedicated senior space. 3.
Jan Goodadaro, just if this site were chosen, are they going to plan on using some noise canceling within the gym if there is pickleball? I've been told it's really loud. I don't know. I've never been near pickleball courts.
So Jan was asking about this specifically, but I think it would apply to any of them. When you have pickleball going inside the gym, your concern is it's really noisy, and is there a way to mitigate that sound? And the answer is that's something that we would consider. Pickleball definitely is loud. A lot of activities that go on in the gym are, other physical activities can be loud as well. So we generally do address that with special wall construction, for example. And then also trying to, like in the concept you saw, the gym generally shares one wall with the rest of the spaces, if you will. So that just helps reduce the sound getting into more quiet spaces.
Okay.
I think we just have a couple more minutes. We'll just take a couple more questions. I got. Okay, great. Yes. All right. Marietta?
How many is the proposed gym or whatever it's going to be? How late is it going to be?
To be
Whatever.
open?
Right. Yes.
Jenna?
Typically in the schools, we don't use them any time past 10.
Yeah.
And we do have several adult programs inside of the gyms as well that allow seniors to attend as well.
A lot of it depends upon, a lot of it will depend upon staffing, but, you know, since it would be our multi-purpose great hall, or gym, you know, we would probably have longer hours. So like Jenna said, you know, there probably wouldn't be an issue keeping it open until 10 p.m. or sometime later in the evening, and opening it up, you know, earlier in the morning.
By doing that though, how seniors are going to feel secure, especially if it's going to be the late hour and somebody wants to participate, but yet what goes on around outside, it's very disturbing at times, and the seniors, I wouldn't go out 10 o'clock because I said, I'm not gonna go out to the gym, even if I wanted to. I'm not gonna go out at 9 o'clock. So, and plus, you need to fill in the expense for additional staff that needs to keep the gym open until that hour. So all that is going to take a point in the final decision.
You make a very good point. You know, right now we have custodians here until things close, like town hall, usually events. There's an evening crew of custodians that are here in the night. We've also been picking up our volunteer usage to make sure we've really increased the usage of volunteers to help save money. But then the rest of that would have to be, some of that would have to be examined a little bit, just to make sure the safety of our older adults. I mean, that is priority. I just know yesterday, you know, I just I had facilities reset the 2 post lights right outside of the Pleasant Street Center here because, you know, the time is shifting. And we're starting to use it more in the evening when it's dark, and I want to make sure our older adults are safe as they come in and out. And daylight savings time is coming up next week. Good.
Not so much a question, but first of all, thank you. When I first moved to Reading, I started coming here to take dance classes, and it was hot, it was sweaty, and they were trying to set up lunch, and so I went elsewhere. And to me, driving to the other side of town, either the high school or Simon's Way, is such a more pleasurable thing for me versus than going to Linfield or Peabody, which is what I do now because it's a more comfortable space. I'm thrilled that you're thinking about the broader population, you're wanting to accommodate different things. I can see a zillion ways to use that multi-purpose break room for the community. I'm also a big, I have a master's degree and advanced degrees in education and development. And one of the pros of having a community center with a senior center is it keeps you a lot younger when you're interacting with lots of different populations in a safe way. And I think this is so well thought out to give seniors a chance to communicate when they choose to, come to a class at night that might be set up for adults, and also have their own space. And the respect you're putting into this by giving the seniors a room where you can just meet casually, not having to always sign up for a class. There's so many pros in the picture you've created that I cannot thank you enough for thinking this big. Because I've had other very positive experiences with centers like this in many places. And wow, you have just done a wonderful job. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words. I think I'm just going to end, I want to say one comment, and I think we're going to close it out here. We have to watch our time. Something that we do, I know my staff, in the town, Jen and myself, something that we have to be aware of is, we're very well aware is, 60 plus. That's a wide age, so it's 60 to about 100. And we try to respect everyone within that age range, which means, I still have folks who like to come and play bingo, and we try to provide a space so they can come and play bingo. This is why we're not forgetting about pickleball, because, pickleball has some younger crowd. As a health and wellness background, I value the benefits of what pickleball can provide in that age population. So we are, regardless of what's going on right now, we're very well aware, and we're trying to be very respectful of that entire age range. So that is definitely not forgotten, because we have I know someone who just turned 100. They play Pokino on Tuesdays. We have, so it's, and this is a great thing for a community. We have such a huge range of folks who utilize our services, and we want to continue to respect that and value what they want. So, but thank you. I want to say thank you to Rachel for being here again. And Joel, sorry, what's that? Oh, straw poll. All right, we're just gonna really quickly just do a quick straw poll. We've been doing it at the end of every session. Doesn't really mean a whole lot. It kind of gives us an idea of what people kind of like. We're going to quickly, we have the 3 sites. You saw the concepts of each site. If you don't mind, I'll just choose a site here in a second. Raise your hand if that's a site that you kind of like right now. Doesn't mean you can't change it, it'll be different later on. Hard to say, but it just kind of gives us an idea of what people are kind of thinking. So really quickly, what's that?
Choose one.
I prefer you to just choose one if you can. Don't cheat the system, please. All right, so let's start with Pleasant Street Center. Do people like the idea of the Pleasant Street Center?
Want to do the 2 concepts?
Yeah. We'll do, hold on, put your hand down. Sorry, I just remember the 2 concepts. It's a Saturday, folks, and it's been a long week. Concept 1 of the Pleasant Street Center without a gym, raise your hand. I got 2. All right, 2. Pleasant Street Center space with a gym, raise your hand. Hey, no maybes. This is a yes or no vote. I have a couple people doing a maybe, and I need a yes or no here, folks. All right, Pleasant Street Center with a gym. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 5. All right. Simon's Way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Looks like 11. Oakland Road. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think there was about, 13, 14, 15, 16. Sorry, you moved. So 16 for Oakland Road. Great. Thank you. Did you have anything else you want to say, Rachel?
Pretty evident of stuff.
Yep. Right up here, Jenna. She's been over here on the desk, Community Service Director. If you have any questions, if you want to talk about anything, I'm here at the center 5 days a week. Please give me a call or anything. Happy to chat. Thank you all.